Good evening, Irish fans, and welcome back to the D Irish Fan podcast, where I am not an Irish fan, I am D Irish fan. Thank you so much for joining in. I had some inspiration. I had to record tonight. Just got done watching that Bama Vandy game. Number one Bama versus lowly Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt won. They came out on top, 40-35. I feel your pain, Bama. I do. I feel it. I know how it feels to lose to a team that you should crush. And unfortunately, we've had too much experience of that over the last several years, especially under Marcus Freeman. But that's not why that's not why I had the inspiration. That's not why I'm going to have this podcast tonight. I was actually going to talk about throughout the season what I'm going to do going forward is I want to talk about Notre Dame football continuously, obviously, but I also want to talk about college football, how it's relevant to Notre Dame, and Notre Dame, their footing within college football. What does it look like? What's it going to look like going forward? What I wanted to talk about was specifically the conference cloud that continues to hang over Notre Dame and their football program, and are they going to join, or when are they going to join, or should they join, and all that. I was going to talk about that tonight. I was going to give context about what a conference even is. You know, most people have grown up their entire lives with their favorite team in a conference. And Notre Dame has never had to deal with that. And a lot of people hate Notre Dame for that one specific reason. I think I have no problems or qualms whatsoever for you hating Notre Dame. I have none whatsoever. There's plenty of teams that I can't stand. Hating Notre Dame because they're not in a conference, I think, is one of the dumber ones. I was going to talk about that tonight. I was going to explain what conferences are, why Notre Dame isn't in one, why they haven't been in one in the past. Do I think they're going to be in one in the future? I was going to talk about all that good stuff tonight. I'm still going to talk about that. I'm probably going to record an episode of that later on in the week. What I'm going to talk about today, however, unfortunately, is Duece Knight. I've said it before, this is not going to be a recruiting podcast. I'm not going to cover recruiting. I'm not an insider. I'm not going to have any of that. I'm not going to have any of that knowledge that you can't yourself find out for yourself. I'm not breaking news here. What I am going to talk about from a fan's perspective is how the Duece Knight decommitment affects Notre Dame and how it affects the college football landscape in general. Because this is very much a college football discussion, which is why I'm going to talk about it. I'm going to spend very, very little time talking about Duece Knight, the player. What I'm going to do is I'll talk about what he did, for one, just what he did. I'll talk about what Notre Dame did during the recruitment of Duece Knight, good and bad. I'm going to talk about where Notre Dame is at after this decommitment. And I'm going to spend the vast majority of time talking about how this affects Notre Dame going forward and then the college football landscape at large, because this really is something that's going to happen, not just to Notre Dame. It's already happened to Notre Dame quite a bit. We're going to get into that. But how this affects the college landscape going forward, because this is going to happen to a lot of teams, unfortunately, going forward. This is just a new reality that college football fans are going to face. You're going to have guys that recruit to your class that are going to be in it for 6 months, and then they're going to decommit the last second because someone offered them more money. And that's as simple as that. It's as simple as that. It is a cash grab. That's it. Nothing more. And so let's get into it. Let's talk exactly what happened. This will be the one and only podcast where I talk about Duece Knight. And then I will never talk about him again until it's his third transfer and he's converted to wide receiver. I'm just kidding. I don't really want that to happen to him. I'm not that petty. Duece Knight commits to Notre Dame last September. He committed to Notre Dame shortly before the Ohio State game. I remember, a game that I was at, did the player walk. He was on that player walk, and I saw him. I have a video of him. of him in that player walk. Long and short of it, I think Duece was always a guy who was in love with the idea of Notre Dame. Have you guys ever? Most people are familiar with dating in high school. We all were there. We all been there at one point in time. And it's funny in a lot of ways. Recruiting in college football is like dating in high school. You get to know somebody, and then you start a relationship, and then there's that commitment. Hey, do you want to be my boyfriend or girlfriend? Let's go head over heels. Sometimes that commitment is, yeah, I'll give you a shot. It's not so much there's a lot of passionate commitments. There's a lot of I'm all in. I'm head over heels. As a matter of fact, those are the vast majority of your high school relationships. But sometimes you commit to you're in high school and you commit to to somebody else, and it's kind of like, well, this is a nice person that we've been friends for a while. We've developed a relationship. I'll give him a shot. And that's very much akin to what has happened with Duece Knight. I think he was in love with an idea. I think he was in love with, man, I could go to Notre Dame and be a legend. Not so much, man, this is a school that I really like and I really want to be involved with. And more than anything, he just had a good relationship with Marcus Freeman. That was literally it. That's what drew him to Notre Dame. The idea of being the man and a legend at Notre Dame and Marcus Freeman. Those two things. That's it. Nothing more. Over the course of his recruitment, he obviously got a lot of attention from a lot of other programs, specifically within the SEC, and they outbid Notre Dame, and they offered him more money, and he took it, and that's it. Auburn is not a program on the rise. Hugh Freeze is not this great coach who is going to be the next Nick Saban. He's not even Kalen DeBoer. I don't know how to say his name. I always forget how to say his name. There's nothing. Auburn, yeah, SEC. They are. I don't want to downplay their program. They're not a middle tier program. They're probably. Right now they are. They're a middle tier program within the SEC. But it's not like he decommitted to go to Kansas. I don't know. Even he didn't decommit to go to Missouri. That's something that would really suck. But Auburn's they're not a top 10 team. They're not even close to being a top 10 team. They're not Tennessee. They're not Ole Miss. Which was another school that a lot of people are saying there's still smoke to that fire. There's a lot of people who are saying don't count out Ole Miss. He might decommit from Auburn and go to Ole Miss. That's what this is. This is a bidding war. He used Notre Dame, and I'm going to get more into this. Long and short of it, he used Notre Dame to up his recruiting stock. He started a bidding war. Auburn won out on that bidding war. Ole Miss might win out in the long run. It's still a long time till National Signing Day. And that's why I don't talk about recruits. That's why I don't talk about recruiting. One, you have no idea if they're going to stick with the class. Two, they are not Notre Dame football players. Not yet, anyway. So I don't like wasting my time off people who are not fully committed to Notre Dame and winning at Notre Dame. And that's not Duece Knight. That never was Duece Knight. And he left to Auburn for more money. Plain and simple. There's plenty of reasons why he chose money over Notre Dame. Some of it is Notre Dame just failed to come up to that number. We're going to talk about how and where that number comes from. But it deals more over the college football implications as opposed to it, just this simple outbidding Notre Dame for Duece Knight. He had a lot of people in his corner that didn't want him to go to Notre Dame for distance reasons and for money reasons. And here's the thing, Duece Knight, make your money, dude. I am not that person who doesn't want college football players to maximize their profitability. That's the world that we live in. I'm fine with that. But there's a way to do that. So the only thing that I would say to Duece Knight is maximize your profitability. Take your time. Go to schools. Get wined and dined. Do all the fun stuff. and then make a commitment. Don't use another school like you did Notre Dame to maximize your profitability so that you could make as much money as possible and waste our time. You should be honest with people. You should be honest with coaches. If you're going to crap all over relationships that you've developed to get to that maximizing of profitability, that's not the right way to do it. I mean, you could do that, legally speaking, at least in some ways. We'll get into that. But it's not a very good way to make money. Because eventually the thing with money is it gets spent. And then you got to go looking for other areas and to make that money. Now, if you burn bridges and burn relationships in the process, the money's going to get a lot harder to come your way. And that's a teenage thing. That's amazing to me that teenagers are making this kind of money. But unfortunately, it just comes with the immaturity of being a teenager and going through this process. And it's still a very new process to a lot of people, myself included, and every coach and every fan and every player. It's just new. This whole NIL thing. So again, long and short of it, he bailed on Notre Dame for more money to Auburn. There is still a possibility of him bailing on Auburn to go somewhere else, maybe Ole Miss, for more money. We'll see how that plays out. So that's Duece Knight. Notre Dame. How did Notre Dame lose this recruit? Well, it's not that they didn't offer him money. Here's what we have always been told. Here's what we Notre Dame fans keep being told when it comes to NIL money. We're being told, yeah, we're still going to offer recruits money, but where we're going to spend the vast majority of our money is on the guys that have earned it. The juniors, seniors, fifth years that are thinking about going to the NFL. That is how we are being told NIL money is going to be spent. Maybe we go out and get a couple of transfers, quarterback transfers, which we'll talk about whether that's the best thing to do. But we're spending money on the back end, not the front end. We're still going to spend money on the front end and give recruits money, but the vast majority of it's going to be spent on the back end with guys who are thinking about leaving to the NFL, guys who have earned it. I don't necessarily disagree with this, but you have to retain them. There's a podcast earlier we were talking about our starting right tackle from last year. His name escapes me. I'm sorry. He left to go to the NFL, and his rookie contract wasn't dissimilar to some of the money being thrown around given to freshmen. And it's money that we thought was going to be spent on the back end to keep guys from going to the NFL. But every single time, I don't know why I do this, but every single time I think about this specific player's name, I always want to say Tosh Baker. It's not Tosh Baker. He's still on the team. But again, the money is supposed to keep guys from going to the NFL. Or maybe you get a hot transfer from another team, and you give him some money. So again, essentially guys that have earned it. We're not really doing a good job at keeping those guys. And the guys that we're getting in, those guys aren't really producing. Riley Leonard, for example. But that's more down the line conversation. So that's how we've been told Notre Dame is going to spend their NIL money. We essentially said, sorry, Duece, we're just not going to meet the number, and we're not going to outbid Auburn. That's how it's going to be, because we're not going to spend money that way. Here's the thing: if that's not going to if you are not going to spend the money on the front end with the recruits, okay, I can at least understand that. You've got to do one of two things, Notre Dame. First of all, you spent a lot of time courting this kid. I know that you have to go into those living rooms. You have to get the elite athletes. You have to get them. The thing is, you're not getting them. You're not getting them on the back end, and you're not getting them on the front end. So what are we doing here? What are we doing here? It, I, and because this isn't. He's not a one-off. Duece Knight is not a one-off. This is a there's been plenty of guys that we've lost out on. Dante Moore. He was a quarterback. He was silently committed to Notre Dame. I know he wasn't verbally committed, but we lost him because we just weren't willing to give him upfront money. So we lost Dante Moore. We lost Justin Scott. We lost Keon Keeley. We lost Peyton Bowen. All of those guys left Notre Dame, were either committed publicly or silently committed to Notre Dame, and they all left Notre Dame for more money at different programs. All of them. Funny thing, and the funny thing about that, they're leaving these programs to be the man. Dante Moore, he played some as a freshman at UCLA. He already transferred. He's at Oregon right now, and he's a backup. So he's not even the man. Will he be the starter next year? I don't know. No idea. What I do know is he got paid. Keon Keeley, he's not even on the third. He's not even a third string. He's not even playing. He's a sophomore. He's a 5-star. He's supposed to be one of those guys. He's not the man, and he's not playing. Peyton Bowen is playing. He is playing for Oklahoma. He's a starter, but on a Oklahoma team that's not looking very good right now. This trend continues. We're not getting these guys. There's that whole argument. Well, even if we did get him, he would have played, or he would have come to Notre Dame, and then he would have been gone after one season. I've heard some people say that. Like, even if you did retain him, if you didn't play him his freshman year, he would have transferred anyway. What are we doing then? What are we doing then? I understand you have to go into these living rooms. You have to talk to these kids. You have to talk to the Peyton Bowens and the Dante Moores and the Keon Keeleys and the Duece Knights. You got to go into those living rooms to get these guys. The problem is we're not getting them. And all it is a waste of time and a national embarrassment. So what do we do? What do we do going forward? In my opinion, this is what you got to do. You got to do one of two things, okay? You've got to do one of two things. Notre Dame, you've got to figure this out. Option number one, you meet the money. You meet them. You're not hurting for money. You're not hurting for donations. You're not hurting. I know this isn't how it works, but you have plenty of endowment money. I know schools aren't throwing endowment money at athletics or football. They are kind of, in a way. Endowment money is used to upgrade academic facilities and student living facilities. That's usually how endowment money works. Not necessarily building a brand new football stadium. Or, Notre Dame is building a brand new Guglielmo complex. That's the football practice facility and the administrative facilities and weight room and stuff like that. They are building a brand new complex, and endowment money is used for that. The Campus Crossroads, some endowment money is also used for that. Although the vast majority of the Campus Crossroads project was donated or it was fundraised. So Notre Dame is not hurting for money. Is my point. We're not hurting for money, and you've got to either come up and meet that money on the front end to these recruits, and probably then some, because you're going to South Bend, Indiana. I know. South Bend is a cold. It's a cold weather area. So is Ohio State, and they don't seem to have a problem. So is Michigan. They're not seeming to have a problem. Okay, and it's not. It's not like Tuscaloosa is Las Vegas. It's not like Athens, Georgia is, New York City. Those aren't great places either. But they're at least coming up to that level. They're competing each other competitively on that level. So you have to come to that level, or you have to be on the front lines of the regulation and the violations. You have to be on the front. You have to be the school that is pointing the fingers. You got to name names. You have to call out coaches. You have to point fingers at these boosters. If that's the way you want to go. Now, Notre Dame I saw this person who posted on a fan site that I'm on. Notre Dame is never going to be at that point. We're a university run by a bunch of priests, so we're never going to offer that kind of money to these athletes. Well, then what are we doing? What are we doing? If you're playing the moral card, if you're playing we're just too good for that, and we're gonna do it in a more moral way. We're gonna spend our money on the back end and not so much on the front end, and we're not gonna stoop down to their level. Okay, well then you have to be on the front lines of regulation, which means you have to name names. And I know that makes a lot of people squeamish, okay, because it creates confrontation, and confrontation creates conflict, and that's not fun. That's not fun. But you're losing this battle. You've always been losing this battle. You've been losing this recruiting battle for 30 years. And now you finally have a coach who's willing to go into those living rooms, and you're still losing the recruiting battle. Well, Danny, Auburn is offering their parents money and jobs, and so is Ole Miss, and all this under the table money. So then what are we doing here? Name the names. If that's true, if that's the case, in which that's what I'm hearing from all the Notre Dame insiders, is that Auburn is playing below the belt. Is essentially what I'm hearing. And so is Alabama, and so is Ole Miss. If that's the case, then Notre Dame, the university, not us fans, not idiots in their basements making YouTube videos, Notre Dame is you're the entity that has to call out those names. You have to be on those front lines. If it's illegal, under the letter of the law, quote unquote, yes, technically, things that are being done, especially on this Duece Knight level, and all the other recruits that I just named, there are things under the radar that are being done that are illegal. So what does that look like? NIL. What does that mean? It means name, image, and likeness. I've been talking about this all season. How it's supposed to work on a very basic level is a student athlete should be able to take their name, image, and likeness and make money with it. Adidas, Gatorade, Nike comes a call and they want to sign a contract, they should be able to do that. Schools are taking advantage of it too, and there's a legal way of doing it. Schools have sponsorships. Every single school does. They have their sponsor right there on their jersey, whether it's Nike or Adidas or Under Armour. That's who their sponsor is. And then that sponsor, instead of paying one athlete like LeBron James $100 million, they'll give $100 million to a university, and then that university spreads it out and gives it to their student athletes. Some athletes who are better will make more, and the athletes who are walk-ons or not playing, they'll still make some, but they won't make as much. And that's also spread throughout the entire athletic program. You have women's lacrosse players making money. It may not be that much, but they're making money. And then you got guys like Riley Leonard who are making. I don't know exactly what his NIL deal is worth, but it's probably somewhere when you're talking about stipends and overall just gear, money, everything wrapped into one. It's probably over $1 million. Well, what did he do? How's that working out? He's got 3 touchdown passes through 5 football games. It's not working out so good. Sam Hartman, same thing. He got an Under Armour deal, an endorsement deal through Under Armour. He didn't elevate the football team. He just didn't. He didn't. Marcus Freeman, and this is ultimately who this rests upon. Not necessarily the failures, And he does need to be handed, I believe in giving credit where credit is due. He has elevated Notre Dame in recruiting a little bit, a scotch. Now, there's a lot of people who would completely disagree with that and say, oh, no, he's elevated. The type of athletes Notre Dame is getting right now are way better than the kind of athletes that Brian Kelly was getting. Great. We're not seeing it on the field. We're not seeing it on the field. And that's probably the most frustrating thing about this is if even the losses of Peyton Bowen, Keon Keeley, and Dante Moore and the like, Justin Scott, even with those losses, if you beat Marshall, Stanford in 2022, Ohio State in 2023, and NIU this year, it makes it a lot harder for those kids to say no. A lot harder. Just those games. Just give me those games right there. Those 4 very winnable games. And maybe this is a different story. Or maybe there's someone right in the wings that we can go to. Look, Duece does want to come, and that person's another top 100 recruit. And he'll save face. He'll get somebody. He'll get a Kenny Minchie type, which is fine. But he was supposed to be that person that elevated Notre Dame, not kept them at best where Brian Kelly was, if not a little worse, because we're losing those games. There's been so much water carrying for Marcus Freeman and for this administration and for Notre Dame in general because people are afraid of losing their media passes. People need to step up. It's why I'm starting this podcast. It's why I'm doing what I'm doing. It's to hold Notre Dame accountable. Not to just merely talk about their successes and downplay their losses. This is a big loss. Because it's national. Everybody sees it. All these recruits are seeing it. This is important. And you're not going to get every recruit. I understand that. Not even Alabama is going to get every recruit. But they're going to be right there competing with them. They're going to be right there at the top. And they're not going to settle for anything but success. They have a standard. Those fans hold that program to a standard. You better believe losing to Vandy tonight there's going to be some heads rolling. You better believe it. And those coaches, they're on the horn to every single recruit, making sure they're not bailing. Hey, you need some more money? Okay, we'll raise it for you. You better believe that stuff happens. They have a standard, and it's a standard of excellence. And I want to get Notre Dame to that standard of excellence. And it's not going to happen until you either meet the teams where you need to meet them on the money trail, or you better be on the front lines of regulation. Front lines. And calling out names. Auburn. They're giving parents jobs. That is illegal under the current standard. Yes, it is. Right now, a school cannot go and give parents jobs to get a recruit to come to their school. That's happening. Now, it's being reported as rumor, but everybody knows that that's not the case. It's been happening for decades. It's why Reggie Bush lost his Heisman Trophy back in the 2000s. And it's currently now why he's suing the NCAA to get all that stuff back, because it was true. It happened. If it didn't happen, if USC did not give Reggie Bush a house, which they did, he would not be suing the NCAA right now. But he is, because the NCAA is turning a blind eye to schools giving parents stuff so that they can get their kids to come to their school. That is currently illegal. If Notre Dame does not want to spend the money on the front end, and they're not doing it they're not getting it done on the back end either, they have to be on the front lines of this moral high ground, or get in the freaking game. Because this is unacceptable. This is absolutely unacceptable. Not a standard of excellence in either direction. That's the funny thing about it. You think the standard of excellence is this moral high ground. I'm not going to do it that way. No, Notre Dame's not going to do it that way. We're a university run by a bunch of priests, and we're never going to offer kids millions and millions of dollars. We'll do it, on the back end with all of the players who've already been in college and transfer. It's a losing recipe. Let me be clear. I am not for doing this under the table stuff. I'm not. I am for more regulation from the NCAA to make sure this kind of stuff doesn't happen. And if it does, severe consequences are handed down. Jobs are lost. That's where I want to live. That's the world that I want to live in. Or, again, Notre Dame isn't hurting for money. Just offer them more money on the front end. Which is, if it's done by the Notre Dame NIL collective, which every school has now, what's the problem? If Auburn is offering them, if this is just a hypothetical, I have no idea what the numbers really are. But if Auburn is offering Duece Knight $5 million and his parents 2 jobs at $100K each, well then just offer Duece Knight through the NIL collective $7 million. Why not? Again, what are we doing here? We're trying to win games. We're trying to win games and national championships. We've got a standard of excellence. You know? No, I'd rather spend the $7 million over Riley Leonard and keeping Justin Cross and Riley Mills. It's not, that isn't working. It just isn't working. I'm all for doing it legitimately, but we can get to a level where we're out legitimizing other schools. Because this isn't going to stop with Duece Knight. We think this is over? It's not even close. We're just getting started with NIL. I mean, we haven't scratched the surface. We got guys from UNLV expecting more money. And then taking a red shirt after 4 games. Transfer somebody else because they didn't get what they thought that they were owed. We have only begun, Irish fans. Notre Dame administration, we've only begun. And if your answer is nope, we're going to keep doing it the same way, we're a university full of priests, and therefore we're going to do everything on the up and up, and that means less money for kids and more money for the university, and that's how we're going to do it. Okay, fine. Then hire Ken Neomeataiolo from and do the triple option. Just pack in. Quit telling us fans that you want to win a national title again. Just stop doing that because you're clearly not going to do it. If you don't, and this is the frustrating thing, you can keep that moral high ground, but you have to be at the top of the moral high ground. You have to lead the way. Again, calling out NCAA, naming names, Auburn, Ole Miss, Hugh Freeze, Lane Kiffin, Kalen DeBoer. If all of these coaches are offering parents jobs and doing it the illegal way, if that's the case, then you need to start naming some names. Because if you don't, nothing's going to change. They're going to keep getting those kids. We're going to keep losing the Duece Knights and the Dante Moores and the Justin Scotts of the world. And we're going to keep losing. Or, here's the third option. Win the games you're supposed to win. We might be having a different conversation and I might have a different tone had we won those 4 previously mentioned games. 11-2 looks a lot better than 9-4. 11-1 last year with a big win over Ohio State. And their arrogant, idiotic, stupid fans looks a lot better than 10-3. 5-0 and being in the top 5 with Bama just losing to Vandy and potentially being a top 3 team looks a lot better than 14th and 4-1 with a loss over NIU. I'm calling Notre Dame out tonight, not for losing Duece Knight, not even for losing the aforementioned 5 stars. I'm not even calling you out for losing to NIU. It's hard to win in college football, so I'm told. I see other teams do it all the time, but what do I know? I'm calling you out I don't even think you have a standard. I don't think you have one. You say it's a standard of excellence. You're telling all of us that buy your stuff. You're telling all of us that you do, but you're not showing it in either direction. In either direction. You need some confrontation. I'm confronting you in whatever tiny little way that this helps, if at all. You are being confronted, and you in turn need to confront. And that confrontation is going to invite conflict. And that conflict invites opportunity that you can take to get ahead in this game. This game that I love called college football. There's a lot of money out there. There's a lot of money to be made by these guys. They all know it. One of the first things that quarterback from Vanderbilt said when he was being interviewed after that game was, "This is a life-changing win because of NIL." He said those exact words. And he's right. We're in a different era. I'm all for doing things ethically and morally and the right way. But it's a lot harder. Not because there's a lot less moral people out there. That's true. It's harder because you have to remain on the front lines of that battle of morality. You're supposed to be a Christian institution. You're Catholics, right? Catholics, the last time I checked, are Christians. It is a Christian, I'm a Christian. And we are called to go out onto the front lines and battle evil on a daily basis. That invites a lot of conflict. And we're told by our Master, Jesus Christ, to die in that confrontation, if we have to, if it comes to that. He doesn't want that to happen. But that conflict sometimes invites it. Which means this is really hard. This conflict is going to be really hard. This confrontation has got to be really hard. I might be a little hyperbolic. I know this is a stupid podcast for Notre Dame football. But I'm passionate and that's who I am. And I'm not going to do it any other way. This is who you're going to get. This isn't about Duece Knight. Goodbye. Good luck. Good riddance. Notre Dame. What are you willing to do? What are you prepared to do going forward? How are you going to handle this going forward? I'm sure you're going to get another good quarterback. And long-term and short-term, at least on the football field, this is not going to kill Notre Dame. It's not. It's not. We've got plenty of there's plenty of talent out there. There's plenty of talent. What are you going to do? I have long said there are plenty of kids who play for Alabama, Ohio State, Clemson, Georgia, LSU. There are plenty of those kids that can handle the academic rigors and getting into Notre Dame. Plenty. You've got to go get them. How do we do that? You got to be on the front lines of that conflict. You have to be. Or you have to find a very creative, ethical, and legal way of providing more. Either way, it's not hard. I'm sorry. Either way, it's going to be very hard. Either way is very hard. But that's who we are. That's who we signed up to be, our Notre Dame fans. A standard of excellence. You have to find it. Right now, I don't think you have one. That's why you lost Duece Knight in the end. That's why you're losing these recruits out in the end. That's why you're losing to NIU and Marshall and Ohio State in the last second and Stanford, a bad Stanford team. That's why you're losing those games. I think there's a lot of people within the Notre Dame program. Marcus Freeman included, who do genuinely believe Notre Dame can get back to being a number one program again. Is it more idealistic or is it more realistic? That's the question. Right now, all I see is idealism. I don't see any of that idealism in action. That's what I'm calling for. That's what needs to be done. Hopefully, that's what Notre Dame does going forward. That's all I got for this podcast. That'll be probably one of my few recruiting relevant podcasts you'll ever see. Next week, this is Saturday. I'm recording this on Saturday night. Next week, I'm going to actually talk about what I wanted to talk about, which was the conference affiliation. Is Notre Dame going to be in it? Are they? Do I think they will be? Should they be? Why aren't they? The history of conferences, all that stuff. I've got a lot of stuff I've got written down to give you guys. I think you'd be very surprised with what I give you. I can't wait for it. It's actually something that I've been wanting to talk about for months. It's one of the reasons why I started this podcast, is so I could give this conversation, or start having this conversation about Notre Dame in a conference. That'll be sometime this week. Until then, go Irish.